The Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium presents Jennifer Legere and Mary Kay Rummel. Recorded live via Zoom on February 14, 2021.
Well, welcome on this Valentine's Day to the February 2021 Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium reading. This is our 11th Zoom-based reading as we continue to shelter from the pandemic. And all as we've been doing all year, to deal with the stress and strain of the pandemic, the lockdown, the wearing of masks, social distancing, the waiting for vaccinations, events in Washington this past week, our damaged economy and the efforts of President Biden and his administration to restore functioning to our country and to our place in the world. If you find yourself in all of this, occupied by the present narrative of the past week and these times, I'd invite you to step back a little bit and just leave the daily news cycle for a while, if you haven't done so yet, and do so with a viewpoint that comes from looking at the world through a lens shaped and sharpened this afternoon by poetry. We can put singular and sometimes lonely concerns aside for a while and enjoy the community of outstanding poetry brought to us this afternoon by the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. The consortium is an affiliation of poets, very loose. We have no formal structure really to speak of except our desire to be together as a group of poets, nationwide now, but centered here on the Monterey Peninsula. We're carrying on a tradition that was started 25 years ago by the local chapter of the National Writers Union, which doesn't exist here anymore. And the driving force behind the initial readings and still is John Lowy, who is based in La Selva and is a marvelous poet. We're also on Facebook at Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. You can like the Facebook page and follow it. It's where we put such announcements as we do broadcast to the world. Jennifer Legere posts our reading announcements there, and we post also records of and photographs of our readings that we have. It's wonderful to have so many of you here with us, as I said, from all over the country. And we've also got some folks who've been readers here in this series, and it's wonderful to have them back. As I mentioned, we do have our own YouTube channel, Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium on YouTube, on which the readings are posted. So please feel free to check that out. Please subscribe to the channel. And today we are blessed to have two outstanding and gifted poets presenting for us, Jennifer Legere and Mary Kay Rummel. They are fantastic poets, and it's going to be a terrific afternoon. Each will read for 20 to 25 minutes. So I would like to invite you just to sit back, enjoy a cup of coffee or tea, or if it's happy hour wherever you are, whatever that time may be, have a glass of wine, have a snack, listen to some really fine poetry, and just simply enjoy yourselves. We're in for a great afternoon. Our first reader is Jennifer Legere, who has read with us before and is responsible for the outreach that the consortium does. So many, if not all of you, are here by virtue of her having been in touch with you with the announcement for this reading. Jennifer is also the editor-in-chief of the Monterey Poetry Review, which is a wonderful online periodical that contains some really fine poetry. Dr. Legere, we don't call her doctor, but she is. She and Jill Biden get to call themselves doctors. Jennifer taught with California poets in the schools and at Monterey Peninsula College, Hartnell College, and Cal State University, Monterey Bay. She's published 19 books, Her work also appears in From Everywhere, A Little, a migration anthology, Fire and Rain, Eco Poetry of California, Missing Persons, Reflections on Dementia, Silent Screams, Poetic Journeys Through Addiction and Recovery. Her newest books are Dystopia Playlist and Camille Comes Unglued, and Meditations on Seascapes in Cyprus, which I believe Jennifer's going to read from today. As I mentioned, she's managing editor of the Monterey Poetry Review, ably supported by Kate Avram, who's here, and Laura Bayless, who's not, and it's a wonderful publication. Jennifer's website, is at jlegere.net. It's a great website, and go onto it because there's a poem of the month that appears there, and she has she's on Facebook too. You can just simply search for her and like her page on Facebook. So with that wonderful introduction of a wonderful poet, Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bob, and thank you everyone for coming and sharing an afternoon of poetry. I'm going to read 15 poems today. I'm going to read from a new anthology I was in that Kate Abraham, who's here, is one of the editors. And then I'm going to read from my two newest books, Covet Dissonance and Meditations on Seascapes in Cyprus. And then I'm going to end up with a couple new poems from a new manuscript I'm working on. So without further ado, here are a couple of poems from Second Wind, Words and Art of Hope and Resilience. First one, since it's Valentine's Day, is called Soulmate, and it begins with a quotation from Dorian Lau. There is something more to come. Our hearts, a gold mine not yet plumbed, an uncharted sea. Who would guess that gawky computer nerd interviewing me for a tech support job would shyly seduce, overthrow my resistance, thoroughly insinuate himself into every facet of my life, penetrate emotional armor like a persistent virus. There's no one else with whom I'd rather shelter. A man who massages an aching shoulder, empties the dishwasher without being asked, helps change unwieldy California king sheets, surprises me with takeout on nights I don't want to cook, delivers fragrant bouquets of my favorite flowers. Together, we explore territory my lonesome self would never have tackled. Summer march with striking workers in Paris, Alicante apartment, bullet train to Madrid, inner tube ride down Kauai sugarcane plantation ditches, commutes filled with grief as my mom died of cancer, chasing iguanas through stone ruins at Isla de Mujeres and Chichen Itza. As a team, we've survived panic attacks, heart arrhythmias, drug reactions, withdrawals, discovered online artisan bread or turkey tamale pie recipes, obscure Netflix movies during pandemic lockdown. Despite isolation, uncertainty of what's to come, we still laugh, hold hands, kiss morning and night, celebrate small triumphs with cheesecake gelato.
Mm-hmm.
Hidden blessings. As we shelter in place, nature regenerates eroded ozone. Deer and mountain lions reclaim community parks. Highways are empty, sushi heaven shuttered. Quarantine gives us space for meditation, reconnecting with earth. The Pacific soothes sluices ashore, sprinkles the beach with broken sand dollars, feathers, frayed sections of rope. Ocean waves reshape granite headlands, smooth, jagged rock into polished moonstones. In the bay, whales spout and breach, shelter their calves before heading south. Over Fisherman's Wharf, blackbirds tango with seagulls. Tides rise and fall. Daylight cycles into darkness. Sunrise returns. And then keeping with the pandemic theme, my most recent book after Meditations on Seascapes in Cyprus is a new one called Covet Dissonance that just became available on Amazon this past week. So I'm going to read a few from that. Masked, swathed in cotton scarf, latex gloves, only inches of skin remain uncovered. I prepare for walks like an astronaut about to exit protective capsule, fragile body ejected into perilous space. Grocery shopping was once an exercise in selecting unblemished fruit, organic vegetables, visiting with cashiers and neighbors. Now, it is the equivalent of the Hunger Games, all of us unwilling tributes trying to survive newly lethal environment. I am the invisible woman, possibly a bank robber, cattle rustler, or tempting seductress, my expression inscrutable as I venture forth beneath cloaking mask. Sheltering. The definition is protect or shield from something harmful. 2 years ago, we inhabited a cramped 2-story marina townhouse surrounded by demoralizing fog, frail, tottering cypress. Today, I am grateful for the sunny Monterey home where we live now. Plenty of high-ceilinged rooms within which to isolate, protect ourselves from pandemic virus. My corner lot features a drought-tolerant garden, planter beds burgeoning with white lilies, yellow jonquils, golden nasturtium. Backyard barrel halves spill orange hibiscus, purple bougainvillea, fragrant pink roses. Lavender wisteria pulls itself up pergola beams, clings to wooden slat awning. In cozy office, I scribble, serenaded by streaming Zen music. Realize sheltering in place is the gift of being an artist in residence, not incarceration. COVID coiffure. After months of sheltering in place, hair salon shuttered, my manicured coif loses shape, reverts to lengthening plaits of white, silver, gold. My husband's bald spot enlarges. To distract the eye from thinning scalp fringe, straggling gray wisps approaching his shoulders, he cultivates a snowy goatee. As shutdown persists, civil unrest escalates, democracy falters. During viral deja vu, we relive the turbulent 60s, morph into straggly-haired hippies. Cloud Angel. I am a feather on the bright sky from the delight song of the Soa Tali in Scott Momaday. Shore fog molds itself into a winged seraph sailing across sapphire sky above shaggy pines. Gray pelicans soar, skim autumn ocean, survey pleated waves, belly flop into anchovy shoals. A seagull masquerading as spirit guide spirals over damp beach, drops a feather token, leaves an angelic fragment behind. Morning Walker. John Muir once wrote, "Of all the paths you take in life, make sure a few of them are dirt." What mystery lurks beyond tame sidewalk, seduces the curious out of suburbia into forest, leads the long sheltered explorer up steep Jack's Peak path, offers 180-degree ocean vistas. Overhead, red-headed woodpecker percussion. Yellow ice pick beak excavates wood beetles, bores tiny craters into sycamores, drought-stricken pines. Spooked deer explode from coastal oak chaparral. This feral retreat offers off-road elevated perspective, backcountry meditations among soaring redwoods, thorny blackberry tangles, puddles of sorrel. Take the mountain lion trail. Remember freedom. Revert to the wild. And now I'd like to read a few from my new book, Meditations on Seascape and Cypress. And I am thrilled the book designer used one of my photographs on the cover from one of my walks. I start every day with a walk. I walk about 4 miles every morning. And by the end of the day, I've usually walked between 7 and 9 miles. So as I walk, I'm taking photographs and jotting down images and lines for poems. And all of these poems within this collection pretty much were germinated during walks in nature. Sentinel. A scrap of Artemis floats above filigree limbs, hangs in the icy sky between witchy branches. Anorexic moon dwindles to white, glowing rib. In the house beneath ancient oak, human deconstruction persists. Relentless slide into dementia. Names of objects, familiar recipes, sense of time vanish, family history erased. Night is chill, growing darker. Sinister storm clouds coagulate overhead. This one was written pretty much for my aunt. I had a period of time where 2 of my aunts were suffering from dementia, increasing dementia, as well as my mother-in-law who had Alzheimer's disease. Unfortunately, this particular aunt was in that nursing home in Modesto with all the cases of COVID and died in July. On a lighter note, spring cleaning. Quote from Aaron Rodoni, "I have slept with my cheek against the earth." During winter, neglected garden shrivels from frostbite. This bright morning, I weed alyssum, dewy miner's lettuce, expunge purple spurge, snip deadwood from roses, hibiscus. Buried under dormant hydrangeas, trumpet-faced daffodils, scarlet tulips burst through fusty collage of blackened leaf compost. Crocuses stir, eager for a deep drink, fresh air, warm blanket of sunlight. Hyacinths bracket blue and yellow viola. Obsessed with rescuing order from chaos, I migrate indoors, redirect motivation, toss old papers, revise a poem, meditate and revive. Rub walnut office desk with fragrant orange oil. And this one could have been written this week. Rain Lullaby. And it has a quote from Mary Oliver. All night I rose and fell as if in water. Too much of a good thing pours from bruised, freighted clouds. Silver snipes glistening shingles, batters snapdragons, flatten sweet peas, puddles overwhelm sodden ground. I dream of drowning, irrigation water rising from bare feet to waist, trapped in a cement-lined ditch with unscalable walls. Wind-driven deluge brings back Cape Flattery, winter slush pelting trailer house windows, hail encrusting nasturtiums, frozen succulents, sleet turning to snow. Tonight's rain dwindles, whispers lullabies, memories of peat-darkened Middle River. Within the teak-planked womb of my old fishing boat, Ms. As Is, I rock peacefully beneath Delta starlight. Gratitude. Praise sun-etched cypress, lifting needled limbs above white sage and driftwood, low tide exposed beach. Walk in mindfulness along gentle trail beside wrinkled ocean. Pet passing dogs, dispense baked tasty treats. Meditate upon swooping pelicans, golden-eyed heron, trash-talking jays, paranoid blackbirds. Sit in silence within a cathedral of wind-ruffled redwoods. Feel higher power resurrect the soul, heal your heart. Bless this bright day. I live a few blocks from Del Monte Beach here in Monterey, and it's one of my favorite walks. Del Monte Beach. Silently, I ramble to rocking gray ocean, where squid trawlers drag steel jigs through clotted schools of tentacled silver. A phalanx of pelicans circled by gulls observe squirming carnage, swoop in for fishy spoils, skim above orange paintbrush, pink sandbina. Wordlessly, I savor salt breeze, sanctuary bay, this holy meditation upon soul-piercing beauty. Inhaling white sage perfume, I admire steepled masts, barking harbor seals, drifting red kayaks. And I want to end with 3 poems from a new manuscript I'm working on. It's tentatively called Secrets of the Universe, but I don't know if that's what it's going to remain. Shadowbox. Rosemary sprigs, oregano bunches spill from shadowbox cubicle, evoke a steamy kitchen realm, specters of lettuce tearing, garlic crushing, tomato dicing Italian-American women. My grandmother's chopping bowl rests atop a shelf, cradles the nicked blade of a curved mezzaluna. Her hands pull a ravioli cutter over thin pasta dough, slicing fettuccine into yellow ribbons on a scarred wooden table. No cold stone crypts for our dead. They knock back glasses of hearty Burgundy wine, sing, tell embarrassing stories, endlessly celebrate afterlife feasts. Within dreams, family members reanimate, offer antipasto, homemade cannelloni. Each year, with the exception of last year, my husband and I spend a week on Kauai celebrating our wedding anniversary. And this next poem is from an event during one of those trips. It's called Daredevil Descent. Despite osteoporosis, fear of heights, I am persuaded to pedal a balloon-tired bicycle 3,000 feet downhill from the tallest peak of Waimea Canyon. At first, I wobble, imagine shattered hips, fractured skull, whine like a baby. Then acceleration thrills, adrenaline replaces terror. I fly over red volcanic dirt, gray slurry of hardened lava. Humid mist, plumeria perfume, accompany passing Norfolk pine, distant coffee orchards, silvery ocean. Breathless, I skid into the 7-Eleven parking lot overlooking Nepali coastline, a newly converted disciple of velocity. Vertigo conquered, drunk on endorphins. And then I'm going to end with this one, which was inspired by another poem by N. Scott Momaday. This one's entitled Autobiography. I am the scarlet-throated hummingbird hovering above planter beds, plundering sweetness from red and white salvia blossoms. I am the watchful doe who takes a wrong turn, wanders from Redwood Canyon to city streets, suburban gardens. I am a clumsy pelican whose empty stomach propels it toward silver clots of anchovies, a belly flopping clown plummeting into wave-pleated water. I am shadow handmaiden pooled beneath twisted oak limbs. I am squeaking sparkle of twilight bat silhouetted by swollen moon globe. I am translucent necromancer's cloak, fog bank erasing pink sunrise. I am scrim of winter ice within flooded birdbath, the unfolding nasturtium umbrella beneath yellow roses, the liquid blur of midnight cougar upon shingled roofline. I am heartbeat, breath, hands sane netting words, a storyteller painting shadows on cave walls. Thank you. And I will post in the chat the address of my website and the page where you can see and order books. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was wonderful. It was, clearly you talked about sheltering in place being the gift of an artist in residence. And you certainly, as an artist in residence, have created some wonderful poetry. Thank you for sharing it. Some lines caught me. The descent down on the balloon-tired bike. I've ridden a bike down Haleakala on Maui, and what struck me in that descent was what you caught was the scent, the smell of the plumeria and of the Norfolk pines and the dust and the air, so sweet. It's just wonderful. And I loved your line about celebrating small triumphs with cheesecake. We have to do that in these times, and it's part of being mindful and therefore having all the gratitude that we can muster. It was wonderful. Your imagery and your sharing is beautiful. Thank you. And I would also too, if you want to see Jennifer's morning walk photographs, like her Facebook page, because they appear daily and they're wonderful. It's like taking a walk with her. And she does range far from her house with some wonderful images that we get to see. So you can keep savoring that every day. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, now we go to our next poet, Mary Kay Rummel, who's with us from Ventura, California today. She's written 9 poetry books. And her ninth book, Nocturnes, Between Flesh and Stone, has just been published by Blue Light Press, which also has published Jennifer's work. And I guess you'll be reading from that today, Mary Kay? Okay, great. Mary Kay's first book, This Body She's Entered, won a Minnesota Voices Award from New Rivers Press. Another one of her books, The Lifeline Trembles, won the Blue Light Award from Blue Light Press. And her book, Love in the End, was a chapbook award winner from Bright Hill Press. So Mary Kay has created some wonderful books of her work that have been recognized and applauded. She's co-editor of Psalms of Cinder Silt, which is about the experience that folks have had with the fires here in California. She's read her poetry in many places in the world, in the United States, England, and Ireland. She's a professor emerita from the University of Minnesota, the Duluth campus, and is retired from Cal State University Channel Islands down there in Ventura County. Mary Kay and her husband, Tim, divide their time between Minneapolis, which they're not in right now, and Ventura, where she is now. And she was at one time the Poet Laureate of Ventura County. So Mary Kay, wonderful to have you. Over to you, please.
I mean, I would really have liked to be able to go up there and read. I mean, my husband and I were planning, we talked about it. We could visit our niece Betsy, who's here, who lives out in Pacific Grove, and we've been wanting to go up there for a while, but obviously we couldn't. But it is great to have people from all over. And I noticed one other person, a friend came in, a poet from Vermont, joined us. So in addition to Florida and Minnesota and Texas, we have, so people really can connect from all over. That's the one thing I've discovered with this pandemic, which I never would have believed, that you can connect on Zoom. It's possible. So with that, I'm going to read from my new book mostly, and I'm going to show you a picture. I'm just going to put on share screen for a second so you can see the cover good, because I think it'll go. Here it is. Okay, there it goes. I just wanted you to see it up close because I love it. This friend of mine, Charlie Karp, who's a painter who lives in Camarillo, California, painted it. He painted it in Malibu on rocks, live out. What is it? Plein air painting. And so I just, I'm going to be mostly reading out of it, and I will put information also in the chat about it. You can go. I have it's more of a blog page than a web page, but it's marykayrummel.com, and if you go there, it tells all the places, the ways to get the book, or you can email me, and I'm happy to put that in Zoom also and mail you a book. So I'm going to start with this quote that someone just sent me the other day. It was, "All poems are love poems," which I think is in lots of ways is true. So that's a good, Valentine's Day quote. And that's what I was thinking about when I planned my reading, was sort of poems about the people and things and places that I love. And maybe, I don't know, I'm sure we could think of some poems that aren't love poems, but a lot of them are, really are. So, and one of the things I discovered after my book came out and I started reading from it was that it was based on so much music, and which I should have figured out since the title was Nocturnes, but I didn't really until so much of it was based on sound, not just music, but other sounds that inspired it. So I'm going to start with one of those poems from one of my favorite sounds. This day is Ventura County Poetry Project, which is kind of like Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium, and I'm on the board for that. And today they have this annual erotic reading, which is a huge deal usually. I mean, people come from all over, and it's on Zoom today. But anyway, this is a poem that I would read for that. I might even go in at the end, read it today. Stone and Desire. At dusk, when stone could crack open, here comes that final fluted song, all spiral and treble. The leaf-banked cardinal has unlocked the slim, sudden tunnel of its throat. All evening, the Luna moths cross thresholds of lily and hibiscus. Bees nudge deep beyond orange clutches of petals into widening honeysuckle emptiness. Such forays like our own into the body, such deep notes of need. We enter the liquid longing of the cardinal's twilight song. Desires shape sinuous in the body's blousy splay. So then I'm going to read a poem called Nocturnes that was the title, led to the title of the book. And it came from listening to Joshua Bell play his transcription of Chopin's Nocturne No. 2 on the violin instead of the piano. And it was so beautiful. And it kind of inspired me to think about how things transcribe into other things in our lives. So Nocturnes. Joshua Bell plays his transcription of Chopin Nocturne No. 2. His violin carries me to Paris, where I walk alone in twilight shimmer, as street lamps, bridges shine with rain, fog rising from the Seine. The past is a stone in my hand. I finger it as evening deepens, plant myself on Pont de la Tournelle, watch the back of Notre Dame as the sky shifts through layers of blue. Darkness shrouds the cathedral. Even after the great fire, the flat, dark skeletons of its buttresses fly, softened by leafing plane trees. I'm not alone here. On the bank of the bridge, Saint Geneviève lays her hands on the shoulders of a child, a young Paris, a city she once protected from the Huns. We're not strangers. At 18, I was given her name, aching to become Holy Sister Genevieve. I, who never left St. Paul, prayed to the protector of Paris, begging her to guide me on sleepless convent nights. She looks through 16 centuries, down on me again, no longer laboring to be holy. Joshua Bell's violin distills blue from Chopin's notes for piano, the musk of centuries, gathering dusk, a surge of strings against the night, past, present, future, one smooth stone. And then I have another poem about a sculpture. I'm going to show it to you if you can see it. It's this one. It's a mother goddess sculpture it's called Mother Goddess on Her Throne, 5750 BC. It's a statuette. The real thing is in the Museum of Anatolian Civilizations in Ankara in Turkey. And that's where I saw it. And this is just a little copy that I got, but it's looked like this, and it's about this size. It's so small. And so this poem is about this statue. It's called Finding Her. Mother Goddess on Her Throne, 5750 BC. No more than terracotta, warmed earth smell, her thick body on a little clay throne, breasts like large loaves, buttocks like melons. She is flanked on each side by sacred lion animals. Her hands, their heads, a melding of woman and beast. Her belly protrudes and softens A child's head emerges from between her thighs. Paleolithic mother goddess, thunderheart of the land of us all. Before Aphrodite, older than Artemis, her face lifts as she listens to her own music. Hair piled on her head, small nose, enduring mouth, shored up against ruin, against history. She is for walking toward, through sage, heat, locusts, war. Her gravity reminds me of my great-grandmother Josephine in an old portrait, black Irish hair coiled, wine dark sea eyes, body conformed to a hive. Found whole, surrounded by ancient fragments of a puzzle, humming an ancient note. Listen, they say. Do you want to hear all the women resting inside us in dirt, rock, chant, dark? I have traveled so far to find her memory. If you like that, it just is on YouTube. Phil Taggart in Ventura did a video of it for an International Women's Month program, but it's on YouTube. So, and he did a great job of showing the artifact, with the poem, which is it's really quite moved. I was so moved when I saw that statue. I thought, wow. So I'm going to read now a couple of poems that'll take you to St. Paul. There's people where I grew up, and there are people here who know it very well. And this first one is another sound-based poem that goes back to my childhood. In this case, it's a bell. There is a bell inside this memory, and a hand that rings it. There's a playground of children squeezed between red brick school and sandstone church, lining up by our sizes. And I am always in the front as we tumble and march through the doors of classrooms opening into wainscoted halls. It's a kind of relief to come in, jumpers, twirlers, shouters, for those who played and those like me who played at playing, for those who watched walking laps at the edge of the schoolyard. We all seem to float away like leaves turning in the wind. It's good we are warming our desks again, such cold little desks screwed down to the floor. How good and sleepy we feel to know what we know. The young nun will push her veil from her face. The small hands on the clock will slowly circle, and the thick brown shoes we've kept tied all day will take us home through streets freshly tarred, through scraggly empty lots, lilac bushes, bridal wreath, and yards where grass will not grow, to our small crowded houses fastened firmly to earth. I remember my great-grandfather in his corner, lost in the smell of drifting pipe tobacco, and later the moon hiding from me behind trees, the pattern of leaves on its face. I come from the sound of that bell and lace of broken moonlight. Where else would I belong? Here's another St. Paul poem. This one is dedicated to Mari and Libby, my two granddaughters who live in Minneapolis, who are gymnasts. And I just saw Libby this morning in a meet online, and she did great. So this is called Over Boneyards and Blossoms. In the garden of the old house in St. Paul, his fine mind saw a mill-florid island, hawthorn and heart-shaped blooms. And the mind of history is never still. Its black thoughts ravens. My great-grandfather, nearing 100, planted roses, wearing a black vest, dangling watch chain. At night, he sang in 2 languages, English the clay, Irish the hand that shaped it. His daughter, my grandmother Mary, hated the British. Memories of famine shadowed her, whispering, there will never be enough, and there never was. Widowed young with 5 children, nothing in her hands. Each month, her cousin, John O'Connor, stood at her door with money for her children. He, the infamous chief of police, who took bribes from Al Capone in St. Paul. And the mind of history is never still. Its white thoughts, ghost gulls, tossing and cawing. My mother's mind was never still. Her language, a stream through an overgrown garden, a mix of Irish, seeded English, old songs, histories, roiling over ruins until the moment she died. These days of arum lilies, acrobats, and angels, sometimes 2 young gymnasts flip down a blooming street. I watch from my porch in the golden hours, put down my glass of wine and loudly clap. It's another poem set in the Twin Cities, and my last book seemed like most of the poems were set in California, but this one's like a lot of Minnesota poems again. And this poem is for John Barryman, the poet who who was at the University of Minnesota when for a little while, when I started graduate school there, and he committed suicide in 1972. But he was such an iconoclastic poet. I mean, he really was one of the big changers of American poetry. So this song, any change in my poetry, the songs for John Barryman. We passed one day in the steps of Lind Hall, you late for class, wild hair, glasses askew. I was just out of the convent, new in graduate school, books bouncing on my back as I ran down Church Street to join the marchers. 5,000 strong in Washington Avenue, they sang, "We shall overcome," and then began the chant that frightened me. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh is gonna win. I couldn't sing that because those jungles hid my youngest brother. At home, I opened dream songs, blown away by your impertinent piety. Iambic, the only verse I knew until you brought me ear to ear with a new scripture. And this is a quote from one of his poems. A Buddhist doused in the street, serenely burned. The Secretary of State for War, winking it over, screwed a red-haired whore. Monsignor Capovilla mourned. What a week. You wheedled me, not with beauty, but scarifying singe, created in all-night drunks, bruised, raging blues, your book of revelations. I wanted some of that wildness in me. As your songs freed my lines, my fears, your music moved in me. How could I resist? I was learning poetry and sex. 3 years later, your body hit the rocks below the river bridge I walk across. My brother in the hospital. My country still bombing Vietnam to kingdom come. I wrote that. I wrote that during a workshop that I was in with, where I met Jennifer, the Blue Light Press workshop. Our story. I thought, I'll read this story about my husband and me, since this is Valentine's Day, and there's people here who know the story. Our story. I was from down the hill, West 7th's huddled houses, under Highland Park's frowning doors and windows. You were up the hill, that neighborhood of churches like forts, tree-lined playgrounds. Around Highland Pool, you charged, pushing us, girls screaming into the deep end. Your blonde hair bleached by sun. My pale skin reddening like my Irish grandma's black hair dripping. Somehow I knew even then, so our story goes, that fate would circle us round when we were grown. Later, newly sprung from the convent, I had just stumbled out of that bleak house in Northeast, free and butterfly yellow, no more under the unblinking stare of my superior. One night in Dinkytown, I asked a friend if he knew a man with a beautiful soul, and he called you, fresh out of the Christian Brothers. Remember how we drove together to the Brothers' house on Summit to pick up the papers releasing you from vows? Your superior predicted you'd end up washing dishes somewhere. We were a run-on sentence, escaping religion, a winter that would not end, a road with a single direction. With a comma moon above us, we merged like two worlds, two words. 50 years later, it's just you and me through long baked summers and the years washing dishes together, slowing the night's long phrases with our full stop bodies. So it's a short poem about the Mississippi River, the sounds of the river. It's called A Swift History of the River. The birds haunt me, full of wind-struck bluster, full of sun-seamed visions, quicksilver coins over my current. I'm not ready to stop singing. Remember me slowly, the way the Mississippi laves the shore in the blue susurrus of summer. Sandhill crane, one outstretched leg, invisible in the miracle of light, remembers mud and returning in high wind, rain torrent. The blousy river opens wide, her body for a song. And I started that poem is in the book, and it started a series which I'm still working on now, continuing. And this is a new poem in the series. It's called My Cartograph. The series is called History of, and it's got all these history of things. That was the river. This one is called My Cartographic History, and this is about when we were first married and went to Europe, for the summer. And we were both in grad school. And it's a miracle that the marriage ever survived that trip. But anyway, this poem is about that, my cartographic history. I never learned to read a map. I had no need of one on West 7th or on my restricted convent walks. You were young and impatient, and I just wanted to lie near any campion spun from stone. Did it matter, after all, how we missed the Jungfrau, how we made love on the wrong mountain? We found another vertical meadow, made love among alpine forget-me-nots near an abandoned shepherd's hut. We were surrounded by a parade of peaks, one of them the Jungfrau we never knew. Old maps were never enough. It's time to let them go. These days, I try to name each rock, bloom, bird, while you long for any mountain. In this weathering of spirit, our lives, snowbound and crowned with snow, we are mapping our own Jungfrau, a cartography of the heart. And, I read that just at a reading not too long ago, and a friend of mine who speaks German said, Jungfrau means virgin. And of course, I should have figured that out, but of course I didn't until she told me, and I thought, and that changed the whole poem. So I'm probably going to have to go in and rework this, work that into. I thought that's really funny. I mean, in the context of the poem. So, and I really had no idea. So, okay, I'm going to read two more poems. This one is in a time of distancing, and it's about in March, when the pandemic was so bad in Italy, but not as bad here, but we were just starting. And there was a video of Andrea Bocelli singing Amazing Grace in Milan Cathedral, and this empty, huge cathedral, and then out on the steps. And then all these empty cities went by in the video. And it just, I mean, I watched that. I kept turning it on, because I mean, I just, you know, it just broke my heart. In a time of distancing. Sometimes I just want to touch you when I'm caught in the honeyed notes of the cello, or hearing the chorus of gulls quarrel at low tide feast, the drumming of surf in their throats. I live in the silence between notes, between whistle cries of the finches, in the caesura of being present. The world wants to be loved. Andrea Bocelli sings for us in hollow glitter of Milan Cathedral. On the steps in front of soaring doors and statues of the saved, he sings, I was blind, but now I see. While videos of cities without people flash on screen, the Seine with no bookstalls, Trafalgar with no traffic, Times Square, a crazy tunnel echoing the in-your-face circus it was. The space between Tibetan bowl moon and undulating sheet of sea buzzes with ions. In the opera of what we're living through, you help me stay grounded when stars call. I touch you in the spaces of my longing. And I'm going to end with this poem called Bluing. In my book, I kind of did an exploration of the color blue all the way through. And this is right near the end of the book and kind of pulls together my blue things. And it mentions two things that I want to. One is the blue in the teeth of a skeleton that was found in northern Germany. It was at a convent, and they found in the skeleton that was well preserved from the 11th century. There was blue in the teeth of this woman. It was a female who was, and they figured, and that's the first proof they ever had that that the women were illuminators, were did the art. And I knew that all along. Everybody knew that, but it's like we had no way. It was always monks. So that, and then also there's Frangelico Blue, which is refers to the Annunciation, which is in the Prado, this famous painting, which was it's the most gorgeous blue that you can ever see. And it's like a bridge between Illumination and medieval times and Renaissance art. It's like this incredible blue. So bluing. The blue-eyed charm is in every Turkish market to ward off evil. The same periwinkle adorning shutters and doors in southern France and every hill village in Portugal. The same blue squeezed from woad, a common dye factories made from leaves of the yellow flowering plant. It cut the growth of mold. Woad blue the Picts used to paint their bodies, like the blue nude by Matisse, and the bodies of Cézanne's bathers, blue blotched, the way the sky is cloud blotched. Lapis lazuli, original blue mined from earth in Afghanistan, ground to aquamarine of illuminations just found in the teeth of a medieval female scribe, used in centuries of annunciations. Fra Angelico's blue of Mary's gown, sky flowing, the angel all tenderness, longing reigns over his ambiguous face, her whole body a question, all tilt, eyes frightened, forgotten book dropped in her lap. Once a blue fog rose on the lake, revealing a fishing boat. I heard the whine of its motor before I saw my children wave their small arms, turning wings loved by azure wind, bringing them home to me. Earth gave us blue, and we made it the color of heaven, cobalt at the center of things. In my mind, the hands and arms that hold me were the pregnant blue of the sea before sunset. For a moment, sky and earth, the same aquamarine. We are blue smoke, mineral, then ether, temporary against eternal hills, blue veined sky breathing birds in and out of the light. their breasts glowing, sapphires where the sun is. At closing time, when the guard comes into the empty Prado, I'm still leaning into that impossible blue of the Virgin, into that deepening sky. Thank you.
Wonderful, Mary Kay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was terrific. It's your poems to me had a theme of transition, transformation, transit. The notion that you and your husband were a run-on sentence escaping religion, just the movement, and then you were, in fact, for us, a female illuminator, illuminating our lives this afternoon.
Oh, thank you. I love that.
It was great, and the emphasis of blue. You know, I noticed in another one of your transition poems where you talked about Joshua Bell playing the Chopin Nocturne, and then that brought up images of Paris and the evening. And the French have that saying in Paris, l'heure bleue, the blue hour, when the day ends. And so you have that theme in your work, and the transition of the passage of time of the little statuette from 57 BC brought all the way forward to now, and the use of videography. It was a whole series of transformations, and thank you so much for taking us with you through these.
Thank you.
It was just wonderful. Well, a great afternoon. Two fantastic poets, and consistent with all the poetry that our wonderful readers have been giving us for the last year and years before that. And the magic continues. Next month on March 14th, because it's February ends on the 28th, so we'll have just the same date next month, March 14th. Our two readers will be Catherine Almaton Myers and me. So if you want to hear our poetry, please do come back. Jennifer will be sending out the invitations, and you can respond to that. You can also, I think you all have my email and Jennifer's email. So if you don't get the invite, which you will, but if you don't see it, please do contact either of us, and we'll get an invitation to you. So thank you all. It just, gosh, now I guess back to reality. It was great to escape for an hour.
Thank you, Bob.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank
Mary
you,
Kay.
everybody. It was so good to see
It
new
was-
people, and so good to see familiar faces. It makes me lonesome, though.
Yeah, it's so weird. We're so near yet so far, huh?
Yeah.
Would that we could hug, but we'll get to do it on the other side of this thing. Please stay in touch through our Facebook page, through the YouTube channel, and if you want to ever contact John Lowy, our dean and founder, Jennifer and I can give you his phone numbers, which is also in the announcement that Jennifer sends out. So it's been a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all. In fact, I'm going to ask everybody to give me a big smile, and we'll do the official screenshot. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, Herman, we got to let Herman sit down. There he goes. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And we'll see you all hopefully in a month, if not before, on Zoom and other activities that we're in. It was great to be with you, and we'll do this again. Thanks.